Hey guys, Robbie here from CFSP Nutrition at CrossFit South Bend. Today we are going to talk about healthy carbohydrates. So especially today, carbohydrates get a bad rap and people associate carbohydrates with things like breads and pasta and waffles and cereal and stuff like that. But the truth is, carbs encompass lots of things like vegetables and fruits. And Lila is here to demonstrate that it also includes white potatoes and taro and things like that. Lila, hop on down. Come on down. What are you doing? Being silly. So, today we're going to talk about what I call green light carbs. These are things that would be allowable on the Whole30. In future videos, I'll talk about yellow light carbs, which are kind of in the middle, and then red light carbs, which are really not so healthy for you and you should try to avoid. Okay, so the main classes of things we're going to talk about today are starchy vegetables or starchy plant foods that will provide some carbs as macronutrients. Some in-between veggies that have a little bit more carbs but are closer to these guys than to these guys, regular old vegetables, and fruits. So the standard American on a daily basis eats something like 300 to 400 grams of carbs from rice, and well, usually wheat, pasta, cereal, bagels, sandwiches, you name it. The keto diet, on the other hand, is something like 25 to 50 grams. We recommend somewhere around, for most people, 100 to 200 grams a day of carbs from these real whole food carbs. Again, these starchy plant foods, some of these roots and tubers and shoots, some vegetables and fruit. Okay, so let's start over here. Let's start off with the main starchy vegetables. So these are things like white potatoes, which would include russet potatoes, Yukon Gold potatoes. Not pictured here would be red potatoes as well. You could also have sweet potatoes. These are things like Hannah and Jewel. This is the Hannah. There are purple sweet potatoes, there's Japanese, which are really delicious, lots of different varieties. Butternut squash and acorn squash, both are technically fruits botanically, but we treat them like vegetables and we cook them like vegetables, so they're in this category. If you're kind of tired of these staple ones, another way you can get carbs in a healthy fashion is going to be these tropical items, things like plantains. I have a whole video where I show you exactly how to cook these that I'll link to in the description. They're really delicious, and even though they're botanically a fruit, think of them more like a potato in terms of the content of the carbs that they have in there. Cassava, this is something that they use a lot in Peruvian cooking to make yuca fries, mashed yuca. If you guys have been over to Jesus down the road, a great restaurant, they have yuca fries there, so this is what they use. It's kind of like a potato of sorts. And then taro, this is another root that you can use to make kind of a starchy dish, if you like. Okay, so that's it for the main kind of starchy vegetables. Let's move over here to these guys, kind of the roots, shoots, and tubers. So these occupy a middle ground between the starchy guys over here and regular old vegetables over here. Regular old vegetables don't have much in the way of carbohydrates. They have some. Any plant food has carbohydrates, of course. But these are going to have very little per serving compared to these, and even less compared to these. So something like beets, these can be a good option. A little bit higher in sugar than your standard vegetable, but not quite as high in carbs as these guys. And of course, sugar and carbs are not the same thing. These guys are specifically higher in sugar, whereas something like a potato is pretty high in carbs, but not very high at all in sugar, very low in sugar. So there's a little bit more sugar in here, a little bit more carbs. Carrots, both baby and full size, these are a great option as well. This is a great real whole food. Parsnips and onions. Now, one of the trade-offs you make is when you go from things like this, these things do have micronutrients, things like vitamins and minerals, so on and so forth. But they're mostly carbohydrate for the most part. These guys over here, you tend to get more nutrients. You tend to get more colors. You tend to get things like betaine with beets. You get to get sulfur compounds with your onion. So you get a lot more healthy compounds from these guys. It's not that you don't get some stuff from here, you do, but you start to get more stuff here. And now when we come over here to vegetables, you really start to get lots of good stuff. So the main reason we eat vegetables is not for energy and calories. If you want to fuel your workouts, you're not going to be fueling them for the most part with these things right here. You're gonna need to use some of these guys right here, or maybe rice or oats, which we'll talk about in a later video. But that being said, these are necessary for micronutrients. Again, things like potassium and magnesium and calcium and vitamin A and vitamin D and choline and things like that. So we've got a few options here. We've got red cabbage and cauliflower from the crucifer family. These are really good options that contain a lot of beneficial sulfur compounds that we would want to get in our diet. We've got mushrooms, which aren't even botanically a vegetable, they're a fungus, and they've got a lot of really cool things about them that almost make them kind of another category of vegetables that it would really be worth including in your diet. And then we got your leafy greens, things like baby lettuces or spring mix or spinach or kale. So trying to get some leafy greens, some cruciferous vegetables, some colors, and some mushrooms or fungi would be a really good option. Okay, and then finally, let's finish off with fruit. So while you're basically gonna need some vegetables at each meal, and while if you wanna get enough calories, you probably want some of these guys too, these are not, strictly speaking, necessary for health. You could go the rest of your life without having a single fruit and be okay health-wise. It'd be a sad and lonely life because these things are delicious and we still wanna have them, but don't let fruits push vegetables off your plate. Fruits are delicious. They're gonna be more sugar generally than anything on here, so they're pretty high in sugar, especially something like an apple. They'll also be higher in carbs just in general than any of your vegetables, but they do have some beneficial compounds that, antioxidants, polyphenols, minerals, fiber, stuff like that. So things like apples, pears, oranges, bananas, so on and so forth can be a healthy addition to an otherwise real whole food basis of carbs, which you could find here. So again, one more time, if you guys want to get carbs for energy for your workouts and things like that, in addition to healthy proteins and fats, these guys right here are going to be your best options. Another way to kind of get an in-between of vegetables and carbs would be the roots, shoots, and tubers right here. Over here, standard vegetables like baby lettuces, mushroom, cauliflower, and red cabbage are great options. And then a condiment, a finisher, or a snack is going to be fruits. All right, guys, so that's our guide to healthy carbohydrates. In our next video, we'll be talking about yellow light carbohydrates and then eventually red light carbohydrates. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.